The Game Schooler Podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Rebirth, our game of the week, discuss the positive and negative aspects of hype in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our high five games, beginning with the letter A. Welcome to the Game Schooler Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, the esteemed Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
How you doing, Doug?
I can't complain. Feeling great. How about you?
Yeah, good. Glad to be back at the Game Schooler Podcast here, recording another episode with you.
Another
214.
214.
If you believe that.
I believe it. Yeah.
It's good.
I wrote some show notes. I believe it. Hard to believe, though, that wow. Every time that number gets a little bit higher, it seems like, huh?
It does. It increases by one each episode.
Approximately, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got some follow-up. First of all, I want to thank Andrew from the Op for last week joining us in the Publisher Spotlight. And he got some love in our Discord that I wanted to shout out. Kristen made mention that I love you when you do these because they cover such a wide range of games, which is why we do them. So we appreciate that. And then Evan chimed in. He said, Andrew from the Op really brought the goods. That guy could probably sell me a game I already own. He was so good.
I'm so glad you called out that quote because I also had it ready to go on my run sheet. I chuckled when I read that.
So, and that's true. Andrew's a very good salesman and a great marketing manager. That's for sure. I got a couple other things, Michael, but I wanted to pass it over to you if there's anything you wanted to get out of the way.
Yeah, in line with that, I have some in-person gaming coming up that I'm very excited about. Dice Throne Organized Play is on the horizon. Might have to drive down to Springfield, Illinois, 3 hours and 34 minutes. Might have to drive north to the Fox Valley in Wisconsin. For those of you who are from the Midwestern United States, that would only be 2 hours. We'll see. Blood on the Clock Tower, going back to Noble Knight, going to play that again next week. But then the one that I'm really excited about for in-person gaming is with my own family, and that is behind me here. Monopoly Gilmore Girls arrived Saturday, unboxed a box, and I was expecting a long, Monopoly. I was expecting a long rectangle box. It was like the Op. It had the Op tape on it, and at the bottom of that box, looking up, was Lorelai and Rory Gilmore. And I don't know if I've ever had more credibility, prestige, or esteemed in my house than when that game got unboxed. My family has seen me rejoice when I've unboxed a giant Kickstarter or a different box. But this one brought everybody to the table. And so we're going to put that through its paces. Not sure if it's going to be Spotlight Game of the Week or in a lot of high five episodes. In all half seriousness, though, Doug, I'm going to get slammed. But I'm kind of excited to play it. The back of the box, you got a coffee cup, or do you want to play as Luke's hat? So it's very thematic to any people who've either taken the dive willingly or unwillingly into the world of Gilmore Girls. Mine was unwilling at first. So going to put that through its paces, see what properties I can wheel and deal, and we're going to play by the rules. So it plays up to 6 players. You can come over and play with the whole McCabe family if you'd like to, but no pressure. If you need to send a proxy to represent you and your family, totally understand. But do you see it behind me here, Doug? Because I'm not making it up. You see it right behind the shoulder up there. You see it?
You're a little blurry due to my internet connection, but I believe you that it's back there.
It is there.
And I have no idea what you're talking about. That sounds like a foreign language you're speaking. Nobody in my house has ever been involved in the Gilmore Girls in
You've
any
never been
variety.
to Starks Hollow, huh?
No. No.
Okay.
Is that in Germany?
More will be revealed, Douglas.
Okay.
More will be revealed.
All right. I wanted to thank everybody who's checking out the YouTube videos, the overviews and reviews that have been going up and commenting.
You regretting that you sent it over to me for follow-up first, or no?
No. No, I'll just cut it out later. And then, so appreciate that and continue to subscribe and do all of those great things. I appreciate it. The other thing is we're going to have, I'm not exactly sure what day it's going to be going up, but in the near future, Michael and I are going to be recording a special episode of a game of the week or a review. And that is for a game called Intent to Kill. Now, we're not putting it on our main podcast because of the subject matter. And so it will live on YouTube with plenty of warnings and spoiler things like that on there, which we enjoyed the game so much that we wanted to cover it, but felt like the podcast wasn't the right place to do it. So it will be available. It's just not going to be part of a regular episode. So keep an eye out for that.
It deserves the game of the week treatment, but it's just not in line with some of our other, values and standards that we've had in the past. Just we want this to be a completely family friendly show. You can listen to in the car. You can listen to, while you're out and about around the house and not have to have, headphones in. You can actually listen to it with little ones running around. So, but we do want to cover the game, and then the other thing that this provides, we've got a lot of games that we've talked about in the past, but we don't have video for. And so maybe some of those previous games that we've covered can get the story retold and put out to the YouTubes.
Yeah, so then we can send people to those videos when they show up in the high fives and not those early episodes.
Correct.
So it's what they call in the industry a twofer. And then I don't know how long is the Board Game Geek award nominations live for?
Today?
For sure today, hopefully on Friday by the time this airs. We would love it if you would nominate us for best podcast if you're a user on Board Game Geek.
Do not spend money on it, folks, okay? If you got to go into your wallet for Geek Gold, don't do that. Just
become a fan, right? You can also become a fan of the podcast, I believe, as well there. So that would help as well. And I don't believe that costs anything if you don't have any Geek Gold. But if you find your way over there, we would greatly appreciate that as well. Michael, what's awesome in gaming outside of the Gilmore Girls Monopoly?
Well, what is awesome is that you're completely clueless on that. So you've elevated from being one of my best friends to just being a truly superior human. The fact that you know nothing about Gilmore Girls. I strive to be like you, Doug. But I'm going to tell you what's awesome with gaming: playing awesome games. This past weekend, our kids wanted to get together and hang out. I was in cleaning mode, so was not as presentable as I normally am when I leave the house. I was super gross.
I felt like I was at a convention.
Cleaning the garage and the basement, and it was worse than, day one of the convention maybe. And we sat down and played a game. I don't want to tell you the game, and I'll leave that for Doug to tell. But
no, I'm not spoiling that.
All right. We played a game, and the game was awesome. And we played the game again, and the game was awesome. We played the game again, and the game was awesome. We played the game again for 4 times, and it was just like, man, this is great. We've been on a hot streak of just playing awesome games. So that's what's awesome for me. I'll send it back to you, Douglas.
It's interesting that you would say that, because in my notes for what's awesome in gaming, I put, we've been lucky to play a lot of great games recently, which really makes the hobby fun. So, sometimes you go on a little run of stinkers and playing stuff that's like, okay, yeah, that was great. We've been playing a lot of games where we've been walking away from the table like, yep, game of the week, yep, game of the week, yep, game of the week. So that's been fun and exciting, and exciting to share those games with you. And we're looking forward to that. And our queue of games to talk about is stacked.
Yeah.
So we're operating quite a few months in advance of what we're talking about. So long story short, if you're coming here for the hotness, you're at the wrong podcast. But a lot of great games that we've been playing, and excited to talk about them.
Yeah. Speaking of what's awesome, I was, I got invited to a game. So, on Board Game Arena, check out this game called El Paso. And you said we're not here for the hotness, but this is in the Great Western Trail series line. I think they're up to like 17 titles in that universe now, if you take all the different editions. So, I mean, that's what's awesome for me is that it's not just, playing great games and getting invited to impromptu game days and things like that, but there are new games coming out, and there are great games that are retelling other games that have come out. And I think we are at a time where we have very talented designers that and great publishers that are continuing to look at work that they've done, in the recent past and think about how can we put a different take on this game or that game. So I enjoyed my initial play of Great Western Trail El Paso. I don't know when you and I will get it to the table. We have so many other games to get to, but I think at some point that's worth both of us taking a look at.
You said it takes as long as the original?
It was a 2-hour game, man.
Oof.
I did not think I was staying up that late.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's one that's been on my radar to check out.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
All right, well, let's move on to the spotlight. This week, we're going to be talking about Harvest. It came out in 2024 from Keymaster Games, and the designer is Trey Chambers, and the artist is Tierra Connor. It's for 1 to 4 players, 30 to 60 minutes, ages 10 plus on the side of the box. Board Game Geek is insane with an 8 plus. 10 plus, I think, is a great starting point. In Harvest, each player vies to become the best new farmer in Furrowfield by earning the most blue ribbons from planting, tending, and harvesting their fields. The game takes place over 4 rounds, each with 3 phases. Players draft a new sunrise tile in the sunrise phase. Sunrise tiles provide player bonuses and determine player order, with the lowest number going first. During the action phase, players will take turns placing one of their wheelbarrow tokens on an open action space on the town board. An action space occupied by a wheelbarrow token is closed, which prevents other wheelbarrows from being placed there. The general store allows players to gain fertilizer, fill their water buckets, and purchase seeds. The fields provides action points that you may spend to plant, tend, and harvest your crops. Planting seeds requires fertilizer and space in your field, depending on the size of the crop. You can plant wheat, strawberries, blueberry bushes, and pumpkins. Players use the tending action to spend water to multiply crops adjacent to the ones they tend. The harvest action allows you to remove all the crops from your field, earning you coins, fertilizer, and blue ribbon points based on the number and types of crops harvested. At the workshop, players may pay coins to upgrade their bucket to carry more water, clear land on their field board to provide room for more planting, or build a building that offers immediate or end-of-game bonuses. Lastly, the farmer's market consists of unique action tiles that change from round to round, and the trading post allows you to spend seeds, fertilizer, or water to perform a field action, clear land, or upgrade seeds. After all players have placed their wheelbarrows, the sunset phase begins. All players retrieve their wheelbarrows, buildings become less expensive, and the farmer's market gets refreshed. The game ends after the 4th round, and players score additional points from end-of-game bonuses, unharvested crops, blueberry bushes, and unspent coins. The player with the most blue ribbon points wins. Harvest offers tough choices each turn and plenty of variety with 8 character cards with unique abilities, various farmhouse abilities, and a rotating farmer's market that makes each game feel different. So are you ready to master the manure, water your fields, and harvest your crops? Or are you happier rolling around like a pig in mud? So that is the gameplay overview. This one has a very tight worker placement. This is what I would call a very restrictive game, which is it's very hard to do what you want to do all the time.
The game requires planning.
Yes. And even though it is restricting, it also is very satisfying when you pull it off. This is not a game where you're going to be having points upon points and huge major turns. You may have one big turn around, and that's about it. So if that's the type of crunchy level worker placement that you like, this game would be perfect for you. If you like more of a relaxed kind of open worker placement, this one might not be for you because those spots close down quick. And some places, like, I have no place to go to water my flowers. Or, things like that where it can be pretty restrictive.
Yeah, longtime listeners will find what I'm about to say hopefully fairly useful so they can make a choice if they want to invest their time and energy. But if you're new, you're going to have to listen to me for a few minutes and bloviate here. But this is a beautifully produced worker placement game, and I place it in the light hobby category. It's the main event for the night, and this is the top end of what my family can handle.
Yeah,
This is as Doug said, Doug talked about it being a crunchy worker placement. You're not going to get to do everything that you want to do, especially when you go to plant items. Well, if you don't have a seed on your board, you can't actually make that. And that can be a decision where you get a little bit of tears at the table. So you just have to have the stuff to be able to do the stuff. Now, that being said, do you put this in light hobby, Doug?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, it's not, I think it's interesting because it's not necessarily the choices or anything that is overly complicated about the game. It just requires a lot of think power and planning.
Yeah, I think it's the planning. Yeah.
Which is not usually the case for a family level game.
Right. And some of the other games of the week that we've featured and talked about from Keymaster, such as Parks or Trails, don't require that level of planning, at least in my opinion. This is a game I've been excited to talk about on our show in depth since we saw a demo of it at Gen Con 2023. And initial play, I was very happy with it. It is also out on Board Game Arena. I prefer to play this one in person. I like how it looks on the table. I like being able to move my pieces and wheelbarrows around to certain areas. It plays great solo. And there's a lot of content out there. So in terms of if you get the chance, you can look at playthrough videos. It is on Board Game Arena. You don't just have to run out and pay $120 on the secondary market to get the Ultra Deluxe with all the playmats. Like there's a lot of different ways to engage with this game. And I think it is a really good worker placement if that's the type of game that you like. To me, it's creature comforts one more level up. This is certainly a level up from some other worker placement games we've talked about as well.
Yeah, the artwork is amazing, and what I would call like the world building, like I think the addition on the video, if you're watching this on YouTube, that you'll see is the golden edition. Yeah. Which I think is a kind of a Kickstarter upgraded version. It's not the straight retail one, so some of those components may vary, but the artwork doesn't, and the artwork makes you feel like you're reading a little golden book. And is just in that world of Charlotte's Web, Animal Farm, that type of artwork.
You're just repeating things that you said on the Kickstarter page, Doug.
Maybe I am, but that's true.
It is true.
So and Keymaster just does an awesome job on artwork, and that artwork tying into the theme of the game, whether it's parks or it's caper or it's I can't think of the monster one that they have. But they just do such a great
creatures.
Campy creatures, yes. They just do such a great job with artwork. I think they are one of the best in the industry as far as marrying those to the style with the theme of the game. What I love about the game is that rotating farmers market, which is action spaces that pop up that are different each round. And there's only one available for each one. So they're usually some of the most sought after spaces because it's not going to be there next round. There's nowhere else that you can do that combination of either acquiring resources or planting or building all in one action. And I really like that about the game of that rotation. I think that's one of the strongest parts about this game.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that combined with, I actually like the tension of it looks like it's going to be an easy game. When I sat down and sat at the table and you were giving the rules teach. I was like, I'm about to dominate this thing. And then after the first play, it's like, okay, what else has Trey Chambers designed? Because I want to play more of what this person is doing. It really was that sense of, oh, I don't know a whole lot about this game yet. I have some work to do. And yet it still is fairly approachable. I think it's an easy game to get up and running. You will have some rules. The rule book is very good. Do we want to talk about differences of player count or anything like that, or no?
That's up to you. I mean, I don't have a. I mean, this originally was a small box game from TMG, which I had played a long time ago. And as far as just blowing up the whole world and universe of what this game could be compared to what it was in a little 4x6 box to, a big box game. They've done phenomenal. But I don't have a ton of experience with the various player counts.
Well, just at solo and even at 2-player, there's a cow, Jerry, that's kind of blocking you out. And it increases some of that difficulty in the worker placement. And I think sometimes I have a difficult time managing the other workers. This happens to be a cow that I believe is the mayor.
No, of course.
Yeah, but very, very straightforward in terms of where to move it on the board, how it works. It does a nice job of disrupting some decisions. So I might have the perfect turn mapped out, but then Jerry just went and took that spot and took what I wanted. So now I've got to adjust. So although it requires planning, there's sometimes worker placements at 1 or 2 players. There can be bookkeeping that I'm not a fan of, and Harvest doesn't seem to have that. So plays great. At 3, haven't played it at 4. I've played it every other player count though. So that's all I wanted to mention.
Yeah, and we talked about the worker placement being very competitive. This is a game where the economies are going to be tight. Points are coins and seeds. The money is hard to come by. It's not. You're not rolling in dough. You're not having a whole bunch of surplus seeds that you're not doing anything with.
You've got 12 actions a whole game. I mean, to bottom line it, that's why the game plays in an hour.
Yeah.
You have 12 actions a whole game. What are you going to do? You can't do all things. Yeah. So, I didn't mean to jump in on you there.
No,
that was
okay.
One other thing from my notes that I was like, make sure you get this said, that's why the game's played in under an hour. A lot of worker placement games get into that 2-hour point because there's 4 rounds, and each round has 3 phases. In each phase, you have 2 workers. And this it plays a lot quicker than that.
Yeah. All right, so that is our spotlight game, Harvest from Keymaster Games. Before I move on to the game of the week, I want to remind everybody to sign up for the Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord, a great community. We would love if you joined. Watch, subscribe, and like the YouTube channel and the videos that are going out there. Spread the word about the podcast. We would appreciate that as well. And if you have any questions or comments, reach out to us, email at gameschooler.com. Now let's move on to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Rebirth, designed by Reiner Knizia and published by Mighty Boards. Released in 2024, playtime of an hour or less, 2 to 4 players, ages 10 plus. This family game is Dr. Knizia's 5th game of the week on the show. Doug, give us the stats.
I'll give you the overview.
I give you the stats. How about you give us the overview?
There you go. In Rebirth, players are leaders of ancient clans hoping to rebuild Scotland in harmony with nature after a series of calamities left civilizations in shambles. Throughout the game, players place tiles to build energy farms, grow food farms, and establish settlements. On your turn, you put the tile from your hand onto an open space on the board. After placing a tile on the board, you score that tile. You can only place food farm tiles on blank spaces or spaces with food farm tile icons. Food farm tiles score 1 point for each of your tiles in the food farm cluster you created or add to. Energy farm tiles work just like food farm tiles. You can only place them in blank spaces or spaces with energy farm icons, and the energy farm tiles score 1 point for each of your tiles in the energy farm cluster you create or add to. Settlement tiles score when all of the spaces making up a settlement become occupied. Points are awarded based on the size of the settlement and each player's level of influence, with larger settlements scoring more points. The number of house icons on each settlement tile contributes to each player's influence. In addition, settlement tiles placed on ports immediately score a 1-point bonus. Players gain control of castles by occupying the most spaces adjacent to the castle. When taking control of a castle, players place one of their castle tokens on the castle space to show they control it. At the end of the game, players will earn 5 points for every castle they control. Lastly, if a player places a tile next to a cathedral space, they put one of their cathedral markers in the space and draw a mission card. A player can have a maximum of 8 mission cards throughout the game. Mission cards provide end-of-game bonuses when their objectives are satisfied. Your turn ends by drawing a new tile from your supply, which you'll place on your next turn. And the game ends when players put all of the tiles from their supply onto the board. Once all tiles have been placed, the player with the most points wins. In addition to Scotland, the game also features a map of Ireland on the opposite side of the board.
Why didn't you lead with that, Doug?
The Ireland variant introduces larger settlements, public mission cards, and round tower bonuses. So, do you have what it takes to help Scotland rebuild, or will you toil away on your energy farm and hope that somebody else takes care of it? Michael, what do you like about the gameplay in Rebirth?
I love the decision of having one tile in that placement opportunity. Every single turn is an opportunity. And I think you can look at that at two different ways. It's like, oh, what's the cost of not doing this? Or it's an opportunity to make a decision. And so there's all these little points that are adding up. You know, I didn't mean to jump in on your overview there. I know you can edit that out if you choose to, but I also, remind me to come back to the game schooling implication. I'll do that at the end of this segment. We're talking about gameplay. Game to game is very different. Player count is very different. Game is very interactive, like a lot of Dr. Knizia's tile placement games. This does not have a solo variant. You are playing against other humans, and playing it at 2 versus playing it with a third player provides a whole different game because of where you're placing on the board. So just a great little tile placement game from Dr. Knizia, but what really sets this one apart is just having the one tile. I don't have 3 tiles in my hand and I'm choosing one. I love that decision, and it really forces a level of focus, and it also limits the options that I have, so I don't get lost in my head. How about you, Doug?
Well, that's what I love the most about it, is the simple choices and the quick turns, because even in a 2-player game, the second that you draw your tile, it's going to be one of 3 tile types, right? It's either going to be an energy farm, a food farm, or a settlement tile. So you're already limited where you can place it. And even in a 2-player game, it's enough time to have a general idea of where you're going to place it by the time the turn gets back around to you. And even faster when you're playing with more players, because you know those decisions are made by the time your turn comes around. So it just is fast. It reminds me of a game like Kingdom Builder that had the one card that you have, and that's the card that you're going to play. Some people don't like that because they feel like, oh, I don't have a choice. And it's like, no, your choice is where you're putting it, not, what you do with what you have. And I really like that as a gamer that likes tactical games. It's right up my alley because I can't plan too far ahead because I have no idea what I'm drawing out. And I love that.
And I think in a game like this too, there's something, and I'm coming to this right now as we're talking about it. This isn't in my notes, so feel free to just trash me if this is an absolutely foolish thing to say. But I have my own bag that I'm drawing my tiles from. I'm not sharing a bag with somebody else. And I really have I have a sense of ownership over my decisions and what I'm doing. I pulled this tile from the bag. This is what I'm doing. I also have a little bit of hidden information. There's just 2 tiles that go face down. And I don't, so I know that those are not going to get pulled out of the bag. So as that bag is starting to dwindle, even though I've looked 3 times, it's like, okay, which 2 tiles are faced on it? Oh yeah, it's that one. So that one's not coming out. And I just love that sense of, like I said, that decision-making space where I might just have the one tile, but I'm in charge of it here. I don't have to share this bag with you. This is my bag with my tiles. So
yeah,
little selfishness there, but it's fun in the competitive game.
Yeah, it's certainly a point fest. You will be scoring a ton of points in this game and going and lapping the board several times, possibly. But
Speak for yourself.
The other thing I really like is that this is what I would call subtle area control, in that in a lot of area control games, it's like, all right, I've got the most people here and I'm just going to hammer it away and you can't even get in here. This one has that with the settlements and surrounding castles and things like that. But some of it is just dictated by what you can draw and when. And there are times where I want to get in on that settlement, but I'm not drawing settlement tiles. Or I happen to draw settlement tiles, which means I can get in there and compete on that one. So it kind of takes the pressure off of me as a gamer to always be making the best choices or be planning ahead of that. That comes in a lot of area control games. That this one, it is area control, but it's not in your face.
That's a really good point. And you can have small payoffs each turn that add up to a big payoff.
Yeah.
Right. It's not we've played an area control game before that was very much had a duel in the area when you're competing over it, and that can come back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I win that space, you get nothing. Yeah. And that's not how Rebirth is. It's you're oftentimes rewarded for that second place. You're rewarded for having a presence in that area, right?
Yeah, sometimes I'll just throw one into that area, even though I'm not going to win it, just to get a couple extra bonus points. And there's a tiebreaker on surrounding a castle. So if it's based on the number of tiles, but if there's a tie on the number of tiles, then it goes to food and energy tiles. And then if there's a tie there, whoever had a presence there first, essentially, is going to win. So I think that resolves itself very well.
Yeah. And go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, and then with the two sides of the board and the mission cards, there's a lot of variety in this box.
That's right where I was going next, Doug. That's awesome. What I love about the Ireland side of the map is that it introduces just one mechanic in one slight new area, and that the added mechanic, there's new tiles that come in and they trigger some bonuses. But then you can have these sprawling cities that give the game a whole different feel and something added to work for. So I feel like they really got it right. I'm guessing at some point a decision was made, and I don't know this. The folks at Mighty Boards are awesome. And we do know that Dr. Knizia is awesome. We've interviewed him, episode 191, if you want to go back and listen. But at some point, somebody probably said, hey, we could do a second version. And we got Scotland here. Let's come out with Ireland 2 years later. It's like, nope, just flip the board, put them both in one box. And it really does feel like a different game in many ways, just with adding one little mechanic with the tiles that do some cool things, and with adding that sprawling city. And they call them something different than sprawling cities. They are called
settlements.
Thank you, Doug.
Sprawling settlements.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the production. I mean, the artwork is so bright and vibrant.
It's awesome.
And the player pieces are awesome as far as the castles. The cathedral pieces stack right on top of each other because they all go in the same space, work really well as well. Anything else from you on production?
No, I mean, I only have my hands on, I backed this. So I only have my hands on the deluxe edition. So I know that some backers had some issues with how the tiles were printed and things like that. My copy's great. It's nice cardboard pieces, everything put together. No, the production to me has been very good. I know there are some issues out in Board Game Geek land with that, but I don't have that experience. My copy's been good and I've had a lot of fun playing it.
Yeah. And the rules are very clear. Moving on.
Very clear.
moving on to the things to be aware of, Michael briefly mentioned that there is a Kickstarter version. However, it's not what you would kind of think. So the only difference is that there are draw bags instead of, kind of flipping your tokens upside down and drawing one. The cardboard is a little thicker in the Kickstarter version. It has 2 tuck boxes and 3D player markers, and that's it. So the castle buildings and the cathedral markers are the same in the retail version. So really great quality there for the 2 differences between the games. Normally when you say there's a Kickstarter version, it's like, well, it comes with this fancy insert and it's got metal coins and all this. This is pretty comparable.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out and doing that research, Doug.
Anything else from you to be aware of?
Not to be aware of, no.
All right, moving on to the skills.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump in and take the skills a slightly different place. In my house, this game is set up on our game table right now. The map of Ireland has some potential for game schooling, especially and Scotland too. Not to draw any offense to our Scottish listeners, the 4 of you that are out there. I'm going someplace, so just bear with me on this. But initially, from my understanding and following the campaign, I didn't reach out to Mighty Boards or anything like that. This is just me being a fan. All right, being a fan of this game from the early days and watching the updates. This game featured the actual names of the tribes in Scotland and on Ireland. And at some point, the decision was made, we're not going to use people's names. We are instead going to use the cities. And what I love about the map, it has the cities, but then it doesn't have any of the other lines. So right there, that map of Ireland, there's so much to get into with, Northern Ireland and just talking about the country in general. Maybe it's just me and, the home I was raised in, there was Ireland was on every wall where you in some way, shape or form, there was a color, a map or something letting you know that, hey, this is where your people are from. And so for me in my house, just getting that on the table in such a vibrant way and getting to just, look at it similarly to what we've done with Ticket to Ride in the past in our family, just talking about the United States. It might have just been the right game at the right time, but a little bit of a geography lesson, especially for my 9 and 12-year-old. 9-year-old was more willing. 12-year-old was like, yeah, right, Dad. So a little bit of a tangent there, but skills, getting back to the episode proper, this is a tactical decision masterpiece and resource management. My resource is 1 tile. How about you, Doug? What do you have?
Tactical thinking is a big one. A game that challenges players to make decisions based on currently available and frequently changing information. Everything depends on what tile you pick out and what spaces are available at the time that you're playing them. So you have to be able to, as much as you want to grow that farm as big as you can, you may not be drawing farm tiles. So you need to pivot and do something else. This is a good game also for observation, a game that rewards careful watching of details and behaviors in order to understand and arrive at a judgment. You need to look around and see where your other players your opponents are putting their tiles. Are they getting close to filling up that settlement? Can you steal that castle away from them? Can you block them off on a big farm that they're trying to build? All of those things require you to pay attention to what other players are doing. And I think the fact that you're only placing 1 tile is what allows you to watch them a little bit closer while you're playing.
And I had a lot of those indicators plugged into the skill of comprehension. I'm glad that you put it under observation. We define comprehension as a game that requires players to perceive and understand concepts, ideas, and functions, how the game works, rules, and mechanisms. What you said about scoring, especially in repeated plays, and this is where I think some of the young gamers will even pick up on it, similar to the route building in Ticket to Ride, and who's got the longest route going. Well, if I just put this one little train down, it's going to disrupt that, right? Who's scoring that cathedral over there? Well, if I just put this one little tile down there, I'm going to win the tiebreaker. So comprehending how the scoring pays off, and I love that in-game scoring with just moving the pieces around too. I think that helps But yeah, I can absolutely see observation, and I think that's why I threw concentrate or comprehension in there.
Yeah, the last one I've got is decision making, a game that allows players to make decisions based on currently or previously available information. One decision a turn, it's a big decision. And, where you talked about, I have my own tiles, those are my tiles, those are your decisions, you get to make them. And I think that's extremely rewarding and valuable as the game unfolds. Anything else from you?
The only thing that I'll say, very easy to get back to the table. We play a lot of games. And Doug and I, and in the house where I'm at right now with my family, we play a lot of different games. And there was a couple month gap from first game to most recent game for Rebirth. And boy, it came back very quickly. And then also getting into the Ireland version of the game too was just, adding one tile, adding one rule. It's like, okay, I can get this up and running. So that to me is also a very good sign of a game that's likely going to stick around in my house, but also likely going to get to the table a lot more often at conventions and board game libraries and things like that.
All right, Michael, what are your final thoughts? What are you going to put on the back of the box?
I just gave, but this is a Reiner Knizia classic.
Yeah, I put that Rebirth feels like a classic Knizia game from another time, but with modern sensibilities and lightning quick turns.
All right, let me try again.
Okay, go ahead.
It feels like a Knizia classic with lightning. No, you said it better. Go ahead. Let's hear your final thoughts again, Doug.
Rebirth feels like a classic Knizia game from another time, but with modern sensibilities and lightning quick turns. All right, that's our game of the week, Rebirth from Dr. Reiner Knizia and Mighty Boards.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we discuss the positives and negatives of
Hype!
What?
Hype!
What's that you say?
There's too much hype.
Hype. Is hype a commodity?
Oh, yes, it is. Did you have... here's a question for you. Did you have a hard time coming up with pros or cons?
No,
in one
I had
direction?
a key chart that was 4 pages long. No.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, well, what do you got? Or do you want me to dive in?
Go ahead. You can take the lead, and I'll supplement. I'm ready.
I think... So here's the interesting is I've got one that's a pro and a con, which is it gets people excited, which can go either direction depending on how that pans out. I want to start out with what I have in my pros, and then we'll devolve into the cons. If
I could get a chance to share a pro here or there too, I'd appreciate it in the segment as your co-host. But yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Well, you said you were chiming in.
I am chiming in. I'm just letting you know I might interrupt every now and then. Again, back to you, Doug.
Okay, sounds good. All right, see example A. A pro, it does provide the opportunity possibly for a game to break out of the board game bubble. So a game with a bunch of hype, such as a game like Wingspan, has the potential to get out of the normal board game communities and potentially become a much larger hit. Without hype, those things don't happen. Now, sometimes it can be a slow burn and a long churn with Ticket to Ride or Catan, but at some point, those games had enough hype to kind of box out and start that trend that those games are in Target and in Walmart. So I think on that level, it's a really good thing that things can branch out.
Yeah, I think here at the Game Schooler podcast, one thing we do a really good job of is defining terms. So let's define hype.
Sure.
What is hype?
Hype is the commodity of excitement about a particular board game.
Yeah.
Is that...
I love it.
Just spitballing.
Yeah, no, that's good.
The other thing I think that is positive about it is I think that it is possible to bring attention to a game that may otherwise have fallen through the cracks. So a game can fall into the right hands, whether it's a big time reviewer or just the zeitgeist of Board Game Geek, and just hits people the right way. I think about a game like what was it? Was it the Game of 47? I believe was one that got a little bit of buzz, and then just kind of took off. Red 7 was a game that had a bunch of hype at one point from people playing it at a convention, and then all of a sudden it was a huge deal and everybody wanted it. Which by itself, I don't know that Red 7 would have gotten that audience. So I think that's a positive part about it. And then certainly keeping publishers in business, the idea of having a popular game sells board games.
Yeah.
So on that regard of publishers staying in business because they have a popular board game that is selling is a great thing.
Yeah.
What else do you have as far as the pros, Michael?
So one pro that I have is it allows designers to get multiple designs out quicker, right? When you talk about the design process, is a multi-year process. We know enough people who are designing games and they're thinking about 2027 and late 2026 for prototypes and play testing. Hype can allow a designer to keep a game in the background, not necessarily the spotlight, but to remind people that something is coming. I'm thinking of Thomas Holick, the designer of SETI, and I think it was Galileo Galilei, and he had another game. All three games of his were released at Essen at the same time, right?
Yeah.
A new designer. That's a new designer. But Hype also allows some favorites like The Good Doctor and Reiner Knizia, that is, and Phil Walker Harding and other designers that we've talked about over and over to just let people know, like, hey, this is coming. We don't know anything about the game, but we're hyped about it. So I think that is a positive for designers because it's an industry where the margins are so thin. There's 3,500 games coming out every year, and it can allow people to get their projects out there.
Well, even on the aspect of a new designer having hype on their original game can help them not even hype the second game, but just get a second game signed.
There you go.
Sometimes those publishers will be able to get, or designers will get picked up by a different publisher based on the hype of the original game. It's like, oh, wow, this could be the next new thing, so we better get on board. Even in addition to hyping their next game, even if they don't know what that is yet.
And then
what else?
One other big pro is it keeps people coming back together on a set schedule. Without hype, you and I would not be going to Indianapolis for the third straight year.
Yeah.
Without hype, we would not be talking to each other on this platform and having a show for, going into our fifth year.
Yeah.
So hype brings people back together to continue to play games because there's always something to come back to the table that's new and different to try out.
All right. So moving on to maybe the not so great parts of hype. Let's tackle that piece. I think one of the biggest cons for me on hype is that it's hard to tell if people are really excited about something or if it's manufactured. And I think that is what makes hype frustrating. One of the big things that makes it, where you will hear, we'll get into our high five later, but a lot of times our high fives have a lot of the same games over and over again because we generally like them. A lot of times, big reviewers and the hobby as a whole, sometimes there's a hype train around a particular game, and then nobody ever talks about it after it gets released or is available to a wider audience, and it just kind of disappears in the background. And you catch yourself wondering, was that marketing? Was somebody getting paid to have that hype go that way? And what's true excitement and what's manufactured excitement, I think, is really hard.
Yeah, I wrote down hype sets expectations. And that can be an absolute negative. Yeah. Because there can be so much energy and focus that is put into one game, one single product. And then the playing of that game doesn't match what I thought because I got hyped up as a consumer, as a gamer, as somebody who, man, I really wanted to talk about this on our show, but this is trash. To me, that that is a number one negative, is that, and it's on me because I fall for that hype. I got sucked in. I fell for it. I should have known better. And that goes back to what you were saying as well. Well, that was essentially a paid advertisement, right? If that person got $2,500 to talk about how awesome the game is, but then they never talk about it when the rest of the world is actually receiving that game or able to go out into their friendly local game store and buy the game, that's a real bummer.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely a negative. The other negative is I think that hype leads to fear of missing out. That is really not good for our hobby.
Artificial too, sometimes.
Absolutely. You're not missing out on anything. We just said there's 3,500 games.
Yeah,
you might live in a very rural or remote or very busy and crowded place and you can't get out to game and all you can do is board game arena. Maybe you're injured or there's a reason why you can't get that. That's awesome too. Like there's so many different great ways to interact with the hobby, and I feel like hype can just make people feel like I'm not enough in this hobby.
Yeah.
I can't get to a convention. I can't host a game night. I have to work. I have children. I have other commitments. I'm only able to play games once a month. You know what? That's awesome. That is awesome. And I feel like the hype, just that commoditizing of it leads to so many unintended consequences in this hobby that makes people feel like they're not enough. And that is a huge barrier of entry.
Yeah. Well, and even on specific titles, which is the idea of I need to get this now, or I may never get it because I can't wait 5 months. Like the game is so good that I can't wait 3 months to get it when it's released in America. I need to buy it in Europe or pay extra on the secondary market because I can't wait that long. Which
Doug's got a list of things that I've done in the past that he's just been waiting to drop into this segment. This is going to be a long one, folks. Hold on. No, that's a great point. A great point.
The other thing I think that ties into that, and it kind of is a ball of stuff, which is that hype dissipates, right? And it's hard to maintain. So there's crowdfunding hype that can end with a thud once you get the game, because you're so excited when you backed it and everybody was talking about it when you backed it, but when it shows up a year later on your doorstep with no fanfare, and you're like, why was I so excited about this? Or and maybe it's great and maybe it's not, and it's like that hype
that's painful, Doug. That's what that is. All right, that hurts.
I know, but
that
that's
hurts my heart.
That's a result of hype.
Absolutely, it is.
But it spreads beyond crowdfunding because it creates a narrow window for a game to be relevant. And I have a sympathy for publishers because you essentially have, maybe you can get some pre-release buzz going. And then you have the week it's released and you get buzz. And if you don't get enough hype in those two areas, your game might as well not exist a week after. The window to succeed because of the hype, because everybody's moving on to the next thing, is so small that you have to just glide in there perfectly at the right time.
You're talking about getting a ticket to ride the hype train. Is that what you're saying? That if you don't get the ticket as a publisher and you're not on the hype train, you're left out.
Yeah. But the crowdfunding and the way that the business churns, it's created that environment. Games don't have time to breathe. They don't have time for people to discover them. You need to be a big deal before your game even comes out, because the odds of you being one of those things that gets discovered is really small. And I think that's an unfortunate side effect of the hype machine world that we live in board gaming right now, where it's new, hot. And it's part of it has been going through Gen Cons. Part of it has been going through other things where I've been around publishers for a long time, and you can take slivers of time and be like, oh, remember when they were really excited about these 5 games and then they just fell off the earth? Like this was their big whole year planned out and they all disappeared. I've seen that more times than I can count. And I think that's a result of hype and chasing new, and something new comes along, something else boxes it out, and trying to navigate that in a way that works is so hard to just make it land, you know?
Well, and I think that's why we're both drawn to publishers that support their games and will openly tell people out front of, don't worry, if you miss it in this window, we have another printing coming. Or when we make a game, we stand by it for 10 years, right? We've had different publishers that have been on this show and have shared that. And I think our collections are both reflections of that, of publishers that we're drawn to that are going to, support their games and not feed into that hype train
as much. Because I think it's,
but it might not be possible. It's kind of what we're saying. It is a part of the hobby. Is there anything else good about hype that we've left out, or that?
I mean, I will say it's not necessarily good, but I don't want to speak. Speaking for both of us, I'm thinking when I say this is we are not immune to hype.
Oh my gosh!
And we are not not speaking from some sort of moral authority high ground of like, don't buy into the hype. Michael and I buy into the hype.
Oh yeah.
And it is fun to get excited about games.
Holding on to that hype train with one arm, Doug.
There are games that I'm excited about. We're excited when they come out, or things you hear about, and it's like, oh, I can't wait till that one comes out. Like, that's a thing, and that's fun. It's a very fun part of the hobby.
Is there a but or an and, or can I jump in on that comment?
Go out, jump on in.
The fun part is we know what each other is hyped about, so we'll give each other a hard time, right? Yeah. If there's a Marvel United reference anywhere in the world, I'll text that to Doug. If there's a new Reiner Knizia crowdfunding, you know that Doug's he's not going to text it to me. He's going to make fun of me live on air on this show about it.
Michael wants to know if there's a pre-backer login he can get. I'll pay extra to be the first backer.
Yeah, so it probably can't be divorced from the hobby. Hype is here. I don't know, if you're brand new in listening, or if you've just found our show, just this is kind of what we like to talk about, and we're not always right in how we see things. Certainly publishers, they have marketing departments or teams, or if small publishers, they are the marketing team, and they need to try to hit the hype right. Anything else?
Well, I think every hobby needs to have hype. And if you don't have hype, your hobby will die. And so I think that's the if you want to talk about positive, it's like, it's necessary. Maybe not positive, but it's necessary. If nobody's excited about your hobby or what's coming out or new things that are happening, your hobby will slowly wither and die. So I think hype is something that is part of every good hobby. It's just a matter of when does it go too far.
Well, and part of where we believe it goes too far is in the critical reviews. Not to speak for you, but we've talked about this a little bit. There's enough reviewers and enough channels out there that are going to trash games. For us, we want to highlight the games that we feel are awesome and talk about them and shine a spotlight of them and feature them in our games of the week and on our high five list, because we know what goes into it.
Yeah.
We have, grown friendships in the industry, and you can see the look on somebody's face when they get a negative review from one of the biggest 2 or 3 channels in the industry, and they're just like, oh, we had a lot of high hopes for that game. It's like, well, what do you mean? That's just one opinion. But there are voices in the industry that do set the hype. If hype is a commodity, they are setting the price on that, and really carry a lot of that. And one of the reasons why we don't trash games and we celebrate what's awesome with games is because of that.
Well, and just because it doesn't work for us doesn't mean it doesn't work for somebody, which is important. All right, well, let us know.
What, trashing games or?
Let us know in the Discord or the comments below what you guys think of hype and how it relates to the hobby. We'd love to know what you guys think about that as well. Now let's move on to the high five. Every week, Michael and I highlight a list of games we want to play, enjoy, or spread the word about. Plus, lists. Everybody loves lists. This week, we're going to be talking about games starting with the letter A. We are stealing this from the Dice Tower because it's hard to come up with 214 high five lists, and I think it's an awesome way to talk about games that we may otherwise not talk about.
Well, and we're graduates of the Dice Tower Network.
There
when
you
that
go.
was a thing, we were in it. So that's
Yep.
where it was stealing, but we did the attribution. We gave them credit. This is
We're
a
borrowing.
skit that has been done before by the Dice Tower. So
Yep. All right. This was I went in before I even looked at the games that would qualify for this list. And I thought, well, I was driving my daughter to dance class, and I was like, thinking in my head, like, well, maybe that one will have to be on the list because I didn't know how many there were going to be. And you start thinking about like all of the edges, like, well, I guess that one could be on the list. There are a ton of A games. Long story short, I could have made a list of 10. Michael we were talking before we went on the air, and it's like, pick out the games you love. And maybe this week is games that you've heard of before, that we've talked about before. But they are still great games that we love. And I think they're still worthy about being talked about rather than just trying to fit stuff in that maybe we haven't talked about, right?
yeah, number 5 for me is Agricola, designed by Uwe Rosenberg. Many different versions. I'm not sure which edition or version I happen to have. I picked it up in a trade and I like it. But the art is Clemens Franz, and the publisher here in North America is Lookout Games. Awaken Realms has a special edition that will be crowdfunding later in the year. I love the decision making in Agricola, similar to our game of the week this week with Rebirth, where you just, you've got that one decision on your turn, and that's going to cascade into everything else that you do. It's part of the reason why it's on my list. It is a long game. That is its detriment for me, why it doesn't get to the table as often. You kind of need to have a group of people that want to play it, that might know how to play it, and then get it played. So that's my number 5 is Agricola from Uwe Rosenberg.
Is that Awakened Realms version going to have real animals in it?
That there is, you want to talk about some folks hyped on both ends with that version coming out, Doug. There are people that are trashing it, and I'm like, man, I love my Castles of Burgundy special edition. Don't be bashing. I can't wait to see that at Agricola and what they do with it. Yesterday there was an announcement though about a big expansion that's going to go with it that looks similar to what the Vineyards expansion did for Castles of Burgundy, which I really want to play with you, Doug, here sooner rather than later, because I think you're going to love that Vineyards expansion. But that's my number 5 is Agricola.
All right, my number 5 we talked about in episode 154, and that is the Art Project. Published in 2023 by the Op. Florian Sirle and Benoit Turpin are the designers. Just a fun little cooperative game. I know some people don't necessarily care for it, but the amount of content in the box and the unique style of a co-op game, this
awesome.
one is very different than any other co-op that you've played. So a lot of them, the roots in Pandemic of, that has spawned so many cooperative games that have a very similar feel of like, all right, bad stuff happens. Now I do stuff. Now bad stuff happens. This one feels very different. I have my own information that I can't tell other people. And you're trying to communicate of like, I could do this card, but I'm going to need some help, or I could do this card and maybe help somebody else, and trying to figure that out and fight and recover that art. Is really cool, and the different maps that totally change the gameplay up, and the way that you play is really cool as well. So that is my number 5, the Art Project.
Yeah, that's awesome game. I think we're going to have really good games on this list. Doug, this was a great idea to borrow this from the Dice Tower. Whatever I said earlier, and I know I didn't want to do this, but this is fun. Number 4 for me is the Artemis Project, published in 2019. Designers Daryl Chow and Daniel Rochi. Artist is Josh Capel and Dominic Meyer, and it's published here in North America by Grand Gamers Guild. We talked to the owner of Grand Gamers Guild back in episode 192 in a publisher spotlight, and Mark Spector, great storyteller, great business person. Check out that episode and that interview if you want to know just some more. He told some pretty good stories about the Artemis project. But you've got these dice, and you're building a base on Europa, but you're fighting for limited resources and avoiding lethal exposure. That's the Board Game Geek flavor text. But here's what I really like about this game, and I'm stealing what Doug has said about this game in the past and bringing it into my take. So I hope you're okay with that, Doug. But the dice are all valuable. So in most games, you're chucking dice, and like sometimes you're hoping for, you want those sixes. You want those sixes, especially if you're in Dice Throne. But in this one, you might want a 1 because the lower the dice is, it's going to set the turn order. So that could be incredibly valuable for the resource that you need. It's a game I need to play again. And when I was putting this list together, it's like, I've talked about this on a handful of high five lists over the years since I played it last. So it's one I really want to get back to the table, and that's my number 4, the Artemis Project.
Great choice. My number 4, we talked about last week. That is Archaeos Society. So go back and listen to that episode 213. Space Cowboys and designer Paulo Mori came out in 2023. This was a re-implementation of Ethnos. For me, I love the tactical card play that happens throughout that game, and I prefer the tracks over the area control. So if you don't like that head-to-head combat of the area control, this might be a one to look at if you like Ethnos. But that push and pull of when are those monkeys coming out and when can I play my hand down faster? Do I need to, how far can I push my luck? I love the hand management and the set collection that changes from round to round in this game. So that is my number 4, Archaeos Society.
Awesome. I wonder if we're going to have some crossover on this one, Doug.
Oh, we already do.
What do you... Oh, look at that. Can you see my run sheet?
No, you already talked about one that's on my list.
Okay.
But I'm not going to spoil where it's at or what game it was.
Okay. Gotcha. But on this game, I was wondering if we're going to have crossover. It was our episode 169. It was our game of the week, designed by Bruno Catala and Charles Chevalier, and that's Abyss, which has, without a doubt, probably the coolest board game cover you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Published in 2014. Publishers Bombix. Man, this is a game that got a hold of me and did not let go. Had to convince myself I don't need to run out and buy it. My friend Doug has it, but you're controlling different factions, and you're really trying to make sure that you get the sets that you need. And there are some awesome player powers in it, and it was a much deeper game than what I thought, and yet the game just flew. This was a game that when we were done playing it the first time, I couldn't believe it was over already. And I think Bruno Catala does that in a handful of his games that we've talked about, where when they end, the end is abrupt and it's like, oh, that was an adventure. That was awesome. So number 3 for me is Abyss.
Yeah, that one was on my honorable mention. Great game, and I think you nailed it on the head. Bruno Catala does a great job of ending a game while it's still fun. And it makes you want to dive back into it again as opposed to outstaying its welcome. I'm wondering if there'll be crossover on my number 3. We talked about this in episode 178, and that is Adventureland from Kramer and Kiesling from Haba.
Such a good game.
Published in 2015. There are 3 different scenarios in the main box. Has a mechanism where you can, it's essentially a big grid, and you can move as far right and as far down as you want, but you can never go back up. And so you have several workers that you're trying to get down on the board to collect resources, and some of them are, one of the scenarios is about bunching your adventurers up in certain locations. Other ones about fighting dragons and monsters, and just not the prettiest game to look at. And when you set it up on the table,
it's awesome.
It's not one that you're like, oh, this is going to be great. Like, it just doesn't have an awesome table presence, especially if you're trying to introduce it to a family that's maybe fantasy adverse.
No, it has a traditional German board game.
It has charm.
It
has
does.
charm. But once you play it, it's very different.
Oh, it's awesome.
So it's in description, cannot do it justice to how it plays. And maybe that's the crux of what I'm trying to get at. And that is my number 3, Adventureland. If you want more details, episode 178, we cover it in great detail.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that game up, Doug. It's one I cannot get out of my collection. I mean, it hasn't gotten played since we covered it in my house. And, I don't think I've even played all 3 of the versions. I think I've only played 2 out of the 3. I can't recall. But just an awesome, awesome game. Number 2 for me is Ark Nova. And Ark Nova is designed by Matthias Vigi. 2021 was the release, and it's published here in North America by Capstone. Ark Nova, you're building a zoo, kind of. You're actually selecting cards, kind of. But what you are doing, there's a series of actions which you get to decide that you're going to do, kind of. There are about 3 different mechanisms that collide into this game where the first few plays, it's like, I don't think I got to do anything. And then after repeated plays, Ark Nova's very rewarding because you can see how different actions lead to being able to actually put different exhibits in a zoo, and how you can maintain your board and build out your tableau. And so it is a hobby game. This is a 2-hour, if people know how to play it, game. There's a marine expansion that goes with it. I'm not sure why I ever bought that because I haven't played it. I've only played the base game. It's also out there on Board Game Arena, folks, and a pretty good implementation if you're looking to learn and play it. Currently ranked number 3 overall on Board Game Geek. Currently ranked their 3rd strategy game. So one that's certainly out there, and there's a different game from the same designer, looks to be in the same Ark Nova universe, coming out later this year at Essen called Sanctuary. So that's my number 2, a game that I absolutely love. Can I just say one more quick thing on it?
I'll allow it.
Thank you. What I really enjoy about the game, we talked about how when games end, but the cool thing about Ark Nova, there's 2 tracks that are running against each other. And once they collide and go past, that triggers the end game. So you can really see when that end is coming. And I feel like, and okay, I've got 2 turns left. Okay, this is more than likely going to be my last turn. And other people at the table will mutter that about. And so it's one of those games where people can't help but the it's not metacognition. They're not thinking about thinking. They're actually speaking about thinking. And so it's a fun little game to just even sit and watch people play and be a part of that. That's my number 2, Ark Nova.
For those that don't know, Michael's a mutterer while he plays.
I'm not as bad as you or Dan.
Me?
My goodness. All you guys do is verbal bookkeep. If I don't mutter, you accuse me of cheating. I've grown to be a mutterer so that I can validate those wins during play and not have to go back and explain.
Oh, I'm not talking about explaining your turn so everybody understands. I'm talking about head down murmuring to yourself of I'm going to do this.
The worst. I'm sorry. No, that's me. I'm really bad. I do that solo too.
If I do this, then I can do this.
Doug, I do that solo in my house. My kids are like, Dad, what are you doing over there?
Explaining your turn is a common
make
courtesy.
My way through Black Marsh here, but I wish I had one more movement, but I don't because it's raining. It's been a flood. So yeah, I get immersed.
All right. So now that I know there's a different definition for murmuring and muttering, my number 2 is the Artemis Project. Michael talked about it earlier, and yeah, the value of dice is a big component of this game, and the opportunities of all of the different places that you can spend those dice, whether it's acquiring resources, new workers, participating in adventures and missions, or acquiring space stations. Like, all of the things that you're doing with those dice kind of hit on every type of button that I enjoy in a game. So that is my number 2 Artemis project.
It's in both of our top 5s. We got to get that back to the table. Maybe Mark, there's a convention coming up. We can reach out to him and we can just go play it for a weekend long.
Phil will like that one. We can play with Phil.
Yeah. All right, my number 1 should be no surprise because it was my number 1 game from 2024, and that's Andromeda's Edge, designed by Luke Laurie and Maximus Laurie. Publisher is Cardboard Alchemy. Artist is Sergio Chavez, and I see Sandara Tang also has an entry here as an artist. Oh, that's cool. That's the person who did Flamecraft's art. Andromeda's Edge is incredible. You have these ships that you are sending out on the board, and when you're upgrading your ships, but at some point in time, you have to call back all of your ships. And in that callback, when you pull them back, that's when you get all of your resources. And it is very rewarding to trigger that off. It was a mechanism that Luke Laurie's done that in a few different games of his. In Manhattan Project, which I haven't played, but in Dwellings of Eldervale, which I have played and absolutely love. And what's cool about it in Andromeda's Edge is it leads to like 8-minute long turns. So I think the downside that for some people, if you're playing, especially with five players, it can lead to 8-minute turns when you get that to happen. I haven't played it with another human, folks. I've only played it solo because I do think it's going to be a 4 to 5 hour game. I really do. And when I look at this, even playing you can pick when the game ends. You can play a 50-point, a 60-point, or a 70-point game. But whenever I've asked other humans, like, how long did it take you to play? It was about 5 hours with the teach. With the setup? No, I had everything set up. 5 hours? Yeah. How many people? 3. Yeah. And so I just think the length of the game is what eventually will cause this to drop for me. And I can see Dwellings of Eldervale rising up over it. But right now, games that start with the letter A, I can't wait to play this again. I'm thinking about when can I play it? Who can I play it? How do I get it played? Because the baddies are just awesome. The other ships that fly in and do damage to you, they all have different abilities. But more rule books in this one than a lot of other games. And certainly the length is going to push a lot of people away. But for me, I absolutely love it.
All right, cool. My number 1, I've talked about before, and I don't know why this one appeals to me so much. I've got some ideas, but that's Architects of the West Kingdom from 2018, Garphill Games, S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips. The 2 things that I really like about this game, I think, are thematic in a level of theme that doesn't show up in a lot of Euro-style games, and that is the idea of you start out with all of your workers. It's a worker placement game. You start out with all of them, and the more that you put on a location, and you build them up over time, right? So the first time I send one, but then I send another guy, and then I send a third one. Well, by the time it's the third one, that action becomes pretty powerful. And at a certain point, other players can basically round those up and say, hey, I think he's kind of cheating a little bit. And those guys can get sent to jail. So I love that. I love, like, how far can I push it so I don't draw attention to the fact that I'm getting awesome abilities every time I put a worker out? Coupled with the idea that there are some spots that you can go on the board and get really powerful abilities, but it basically decreases your credibility, your holiness. I can't recall exactly what they call it.
Virtue?
Virtue. Yeah, it's virtue. And so, and there are certain projects, like, you can't contribute to the cathedral if you're not virtuous.
You can't.
And you're going to score lower points if you stay down on that level, but you may have accumulated way more points because of being at that level. So trying to balance that, and is there a way that I can kind of dip my toe into the dark side, but then get back up to the top of the track by the end of the game? And so figuring out, like, those opportunities, like, when can I be bad? When's the best time to be bad? And I really like that in this game, those decisions. So that is my number 1, Architects of the West Kingdom.
That's awesome.
Michael mentioned it's a tough list to make. Alhambra, Airlines Europe, Adventure Party, Abyss.
Azul.
I can't believe that wasn't on your list.
I brought Abyss.
No, that was on my honorable mention. And then
I had Azul at number 1 when I first put this list together, and I just watched it slide and slide.
I was shocked. I'm surprised by that.
I love Azul. Agent Avenue is another one, a little 2-player game that my daughter and I have just been loving, and I had that at number 3, and then it slid and slid and slid. So yeah, Autobahn, Art Society, Adventure Party, the role-playing game. I thought for sure Doug was going to put it on his list, so I didn't need to put it on my list. But lesson learned for the rest of the alphabet.
Yeah, the other one that's kind of unique, I'm going to talk about it now because I don't know if I'll be able to talk about it on the other letter, is in my collection, it comes up as an A until they changed the title. And that was, I know it as Augustus, but they changed it to Rise of Augustus. And so it comes up in both of those sections, a great little bingo-style game from Paulo Mori as well. So let us know in the comments below or in the Discord what games you love that begin with the letter A. I'd love to hear which ones we'd missed. Reminder to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on X at GameSchoolerU. Subscribe and like our videos on YouTube and join our Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. Next week, we're going to be talking about Dreadful Meadows Cat Lady. We're going to possibly have a publisher spotlight, and we're going to be talking about our high five games set in ancient times. Thank you so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
Now, I just want to end this a little bit differently. I really appreciate everybody who has given thumbs up and said that they're going to nominate us for the Board Game Geek Awards. That's awesome. Just hearing that and people that are thumbs up and, hey, nominate. I can't tell you how that warms our heart. And we do this for fun, but that's awesome. So get out there and keep gaming.